and I'm delighted to say we are joined in the studio right now by Mr. Nigel Farage from the Reform Party. Obviously not the leader of the Reform Party. What's the official title?
Honorary President.
Honorary President of the Reform Party. Kicked off yesterday in Dover with an event at which you unveiled a new MP candidate for Dover, Howard Cox. But you also sort of kick-started, I suppose, the Reform campaign about stopping the boats, about how the Conservative Party have kind of lost the plot. But you also came up for an awful lot of the usual kind of barrage the Farage type stuff, didn't you?
I did. I mean, look, I was there to say the reason the election's on July the 4th is dead simple. The big promise of planes going to Rwanda was not going to happen.
Right.
They weren't going. There's no way that court in Strasbourg was going to allow this to happen. Sunak knew that. He knew if the planes didn't go, one of his flagship policies would have been absolutely catastrophically torn to pieces, and the Reform vote would have gone even higher. So that I was there making the point that actually the Rwanda plan doesn't work, all the while we've got a foreign court in Strasbourg telling us how we can control our borders. Simple as.
Yeah.
Worth pointing out, though, that Starmer and the Labour Party have nothing to say. Tackle the gangs. We've been saying that about the drugs gangs in Britain for decades. It makes no difference.
It doesn't work, no.
There's too much money involved.
Well, I've been saying this morning, you know, we're only a week ago, we didn't know there was an election, right? It didn't happen until 5 o'clock last Wednesday. But ever since the starting gun has been fired, there have been all sorts of conversations about national service. We've got today the end of the Mickey Mouse degree. We've got the NHS being presented as something that the Labour Party can fix. There hasn't really been any immigration policy which has been unveiled by either party.
You know why? You know why? Because Labour opened the door to mass immigration on a scale this country had never seen, and the Conservatives have accelerated it.
Yeah.
The numbers are even bigger. So neither side wants to talk about legal immigration. Neither side will dare talk about the fact that parts of our towns and cities are literally becoming unrecognisable in every way. And I talked at the weekend on Sky with Trevor Phillips about British values being undermined.
Yeah.
Look at that demonstration last night in Parliament Square.
Incredible.
I mean, were they British values?
Well, they were shouting for jihad, as far as I could make out.
Yeah.
And they were also there from 6 in the afternoon, and they were supposed to finish at 8. They were still there being cleared out by the police at 2 a.m. I mean, you know, my father used to say to me when he watched these demonstrations in the Middle East, what do these people do for a living? You know, there doesn't seem to be anybody actually doing any work.
That's okay. The welfare state looks after everybody.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It absolutely does. But, you know, then you see the Angela Rayner story from today, where she's been seen at the weekend talking to a group of what can only be described as Muslim community leaders, I'm assuming, promising them that if Labour gets in, they will recognise Palestine, which is not even Labour Party policy.
No, and did you notice? I mean, she was begging, actually.
Yeah.
Begging for vote. Did you notice?
Quite craven.
Not a woman in the room.
No.
Did you notice the celebrations in Leeds, Bradford, Burnley? All the men outside chanting. Not a woman to be seen.
Yeah.
So we're heading for sectarian politics in which women are excluded, which virtually takes us back 100 years in terms of our advancement as a society and the way in which we've changed. So my job, Mike, over the next 6 weeks is to travel around the country and to try, through the media, to challenge Starmer and Sunak to start honestly debating issues that they would rather brush under the carpet, and at the same time support Reform candidates.
Now, of course, many people said that, you know, you should debate Rishi Sunak. I've had a couple of messages from people before you came in today to say, why don't you challenge Keir Starmer to a debate? Because actually he's more likely to be the next Prime Minister. Would you do that?
I'm going to. I'm going to. I half did it yesterday, but I'll make it more formal over the next 2 days. I mean, look, when it comes to the boats, and I'm going to say this, I was there 4 years ago, going out into the Channel.
You were on here 4 years ago with me.
Talking about all of this, and I was predicting that this was going to become, that the Trickle would become a flood, would become an invasion. Now, they can't bear me using that
word. They don't like that word.
But it's 3,800 boats. Just think about that.
Right.
It's almost unbelievable that it's that big. It's like D-Day in reverse.
Yeah. Well, you said this yesterday. And also, you know, when it went over the 10,000 at the weekend, it was 5 boats, I think, all of which had more than 50 people on them.
Yep.
So these are not really even small boats anymore.
No, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, the average 4 years ago was about 15 per boat. Now it's 50.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. But nobody has been involved with this issue more than I have. And just as Nick Clegg, when he was Deputy Prime Minister, challenged me to a debate on Europe. I think on illegal immigration, if they want to have a conversation, I'm the person to come to.
Now, Henry Bolton, who was on with us yesterday, funnily enough, was looking forward to your speech down there in Dover. But he said afterwards he didn't think that you'd actually said what you would have done to stop the boats. He said, you know, we know that Reform would have a plan.
Deport people who come illegally. And here's the funny thing. Here is how the national debate has gone so far to the left under 14 years of Conservatives. In the year 2009 to 10, the last full year of the Labour government, they deported 45,000 illegal immigrants. We now deport a few thousand if we're lucky.
And then we've done away with the detention centres that the Blair government used to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the answer, what I was saying yesterday, Henry, if you're listening, was that all the while we have a foreign court overseeing this. That's the Gordian knot you have to cut. Once you cut it, you're free to do what the hell you want. But people who come illegally have to know they will be deported.
Well, listen to me. When we talk to people about whether or not you should have stood and whether or not you should have run as a candidate, they say, well, we're a bit disappointed.
I know.
You know, they wanted you to be the sort of the torchbearer, if you like, because you are the leader, regardless of Richard Tyson. I'm going to ask you about him in a minute. You know, he's somebody that's very well known to me as well. You know, you're considered as the leader of Reform, even though you're not technically the leader. But you said that you didn't want to run because there wasn't enough time for a campaign.
Can we deal with disappointment first?
Yes.
All right. I was going to launch my campaign tomorrow.
Right.
Tomorrow. To say, right, that's it. 6 months on the road campaigning. Whether Sunak caught a whiff of that or not, I don't know.
Right.
Maybe he did. It's not impossible. Maybe he did. I can't start in a constituency from scratch in 6 weeks and come and talk to you, travel around the country. I literally cannot do both. So it's a big decision. What do you do?
Right.
And I want Reform to get many millions of votes. It is going to get many millions of votes. I very much hope we get that spearhead into Westminster. Because I tell you something, Labour are going to win. It's over. Labour are.
Because that's the other question I get from people is why do you not look forward to more of a sort of, rather than looking forward to coming second if at best, or coming in a third maybe at worst, why not look at actually possibly going all out and winning?
Because it's impossible. You know, we have a system that is, if this was proportional representation, an Italian-style system, a Dutch-style system, I promise you, I'd be sitting in here saying to you, I can beat Keir Starmer. But we don't have that system. And because of that system and the way in which it works, people do, however they think, vote differently. But what we can do, and what we need to do, is to realign the centre-right of British politics. And if Reform aren't strong, and Reform don't have a presence in that parliament, we can't do it. The Conservatives are going to be in opposition, but they won't be the opposition. They hate each other. They disagree on virtually everything. They honestly, policy-wise, serve almost no purpose. So I think that is a better, bigger thing I can do in the next 6 weeks than going to a constituency and spending 10 hours a day knocking on doors. That's the view I've taken. OK. We've got some voice notes coming in for you. This is a WhatsApp thing. Send it to this number, 0344 499 1000. This is one from Sam. It's a question for you. Hi, Sam.
Hi, question for Nigel. Regarding the immigrations, particularly the illegal immigrants, if they're getting rid of their ID and passports, where can we send them? What is the answer to that? Yeah, it's a good question. They do deliberately throw away their... I mean, I've actually filmed this. It's actually there on YouTube. I've seen that, of the iPhone being chucked into the sea in a little plastic bag with obviously a weight in it. The answer to that is, of course, that we do actually have the ability through sampling and tests to pretty much work out where people are from. Right. You know, it's one small skin sample. But are you allowed to even do that, though, given that the lefty lawyers would say, well, no, you can't be doing that. Once you're in control of your own country and outside the ECHR, mate, you can do pretty much what you want. Right. And we'd never be a barbarous regime at all. But yes, they do make it difficult for us, and the reason they chuck these documents away is to make sending people back more difficult, but it's not very hard to work out. I mean, that's the other problem, isn't it? That we know, for example, I mean, I know, you know the south coast of this country probably better than anybody. I know from being in Sussex for many years that there are people coming off boats that we don't even know about. There are people landing in places like Pett Level where it's very flat, even places like Hastings. People I know in Hastings have seen people getting off a boat and running into the town, never to be seen again. Oh, yeah, and I think you'll find some of the creeks in East Anglia. There are smart yachts with people paying big dough. Right. Well, I say people paying big dough. Drug gangs in Britain. Yeah.
paying big dough
Yeah.
to get people into work for them. So, the problem is far bigger than we realise.
Yeah.
But also, the other second answer to the question that was just asked by Sam is, of course, language. In the end, they have to start speaking in a tongue of some kind to somebody.
Yes.
So we can work out where they're from. Where it gets harder is to work out exactly who they are.
Yes.
You know, and I remember back in 2015 when I warned the European Union about the Mediterranean problem. I said, if you implement a policy that says anyone that comes across the Med can stay, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And ISIS at the time boasted that they would use the Mediterranean route to flood Europe with its operatives. I think when ISIS say things like that, we ought to take it seriously.
Well, we've seen stuff on social media that Hamas have said similar things.
Oh,
as
yes,
well.
yes. Well, that's why I said yesterday, Mike, we need to have a national security emergency. That is what the channel is. It poses a huge threat to us.
It really does, because it's the most incredible thing to say that during even lockdown, the only way to get from France to England was by dinghy illegally. It seemed extraordinary to me, and I was saying, how come we can't stop these people? Absolutely ridiculous. But let's go back to the interview with Trevor Phillips on Sky, because, of course, we will probably see these Palestinian protests going on for many, many years if nothing changes, right? Do you think that the number one threat to a cohesive society actually now is the Muslim faith?
It doesn't just have to be the Muslim faith, it can be other things. And I think the Muslim faith itself would be a mistake, because I think there are a vast number of people who follow the Muslim religion living in Britain, working as doctors, school teachers, paying their taxes, obeying the law, and they have their own private religious observance, but publicly they're very integrated. They want their kids to do well at school and get on. So it's a huge mistake to say the Muslim faith. You know, as we all know, that faith has all sorts of different strands. And a lot depends on what country people come from.
And a lot of the problems
but here's the worry.
in the Middle East is the Shias and the Sunnis, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, always clashing repeatedly. What I identified on Trevor Phillips, and I am not going to back away from this, what I said precisely was that a growing number of young people within our inner city and small town communities are now adopting values that aren't just un-British, they are anti-British and actually quite dangerous. And I find it quite frightening, and I bet many of your listeners and viewers find it pretty disconcerting. And
but what's interesting is that some of those young people were born here.
Well, you see, now we understand there's been radicalisation since October the 7th, Gaza, etc. We understand that. Another reason why we must stop the boats crossing the channel.
Right.
What I don't understand is why it's this younger cohort. What I understand even less is why nearly all of them were born in this country. I don't know the answers to this, but what I do know is there's a very real problem. And you know, when you see in that poll 23% of British 18 to 24-year-old Muslims support jihad, well, that's not particularly British value, is it?
It really isn't.
We've got a major problem here. So that's what I was doing. And of course, you know, I was being treated by most broadcast media yesterday, you know, as if I was Milosevic or some sort of war criminal.
Unbelievable.
Over daring to raise the issue.
Well, let's have a look at what the BBC said. This is when they cut away from you. You probably got sick and tired of watching this, but I'm not. Let's have a look at when they cut away.
He has said that this is now a matter of national security.
Nigel Farage with his customary inflammatory language there at a Reform UK press conference. He declined to stand for a seat.
A customary inflammatory
so they cut me off. So they were covering the speech live.
Right.
And they obviously heard me saying that, and some producer went, get him off, get him off. And she, of course, without having time to think, shows her true colours.
Yes.
Her true colours of absolute prejudice and bias in every way. Right. They cut me off.
Without also knowing that you were quoting from Donald Tusk.
I was making it very clear that, you know, this EU lovey, who I did battle with, this is becoming, I mean, all over Europe, they're now having a frank conversation about this. Only place we can't do it is here.
Right. They're having a much more frank conversation about it, and they're actually electing people who are against the EU sort of will, if you like.
And you see, if our electoral system was different, we'd be doing the same. We are very, very trapped by this first past the post system. It's difficult to change things. Much easier to change things in France, or in Italy, or Germany, or somewhere else. But yeah. So anyway, I obviously complained.
Yes.
Said this is monstrous.
Yeah.
And they thought, hang on. This is the bloke who caused us all the trouble last year. This is the bloke who fought us publicly for 5 days over what we broadcast about him being debanked because he hadn't got enough money.
Right.
In the end, he beat us. We had a humiliating climb down. We best get out of this pretty quickly.
Right. So let's see how they did that.
Now, an apology. Earlier today, we heard live from Nigel Farage speaking at that election event we just saw. And when we came away from his live speech, I used language to describe it, which didn't meet the BBC's editorial standards on impartiality. I'd like to apologise to Mr Farage and viewers for this.
So
she looks like she's just eaten a bag of lemons.
I know.
She wasn't
I mean,
very
do you
happy.
accept that? It's not really an apology, is it?
Do you know what? It's a victory. It's a win. I have never, ever seen the BBC apologise that quickly. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. So, look, she's shown her prejudice. She's shown her bias. But maybe for the next 5 or 6 weeks, the BBC will be a little bit more careful.
Yes.
About what they do.
As they should be, because, you know, it's no longer talking about what you might have just said in the past was a minor party. Reform is not can no longer be described as a minor party.
No.
I mean, let's talk about how many seats Reform could win and whether they could win more seats depending on, you know, the candidates, how good they are, where they're standing. What do you think?
Depends on the big M.
Yeah.
It's all about the big M. You know, can we get momentum going in this campaign? And that's one of the things I'm trying to help with. That's why I'm out.
Because in the polls, although, you know, the
Yeah.
polls have been showing you catching up with the Tories, they're not really moving that much at the moment, are they?
Everything's been pretty stagnant
Yeah.
since the election was announced. But I think we need a few more days to judge where this is going. I may be wrong. I just don't think the Conservatives are going to bounce. I just think
Their heart's
where
not
they
in
are.
it, is it?
No.
I mean, Rishi Sunak doesn't look like a man that even wants to be Prime Minister.
And cabinet ministers aren't out campaigning, and no, their heart. I think you're absolutely right. Their heart's not in it. So Reform, go for it. You know, I mean, if we had 6 months at this, I'd have felt a lot more confident. But no, we're going to get millions of votes and some seats. How many, Mike? I can't tell you.
Okay. Now, of course, Rishi Sunak was asked whether he was going to shoot off to America as soon as the election was over. And he unfortunately kiboshed himself by saying, oh, absolutely not. No, I'm going to stay here. I bet Mrs. Sunak wasn't too happy about that. But I'm going to have to ask you the same question because you've talked about the possibilities in America, the possibility of working either with Donald Trump or maybe an immediate job there. What's the situation with that? Are you going to be here after the election?
Mike, I could. Honestly, I'm very lucky. I've got a future. I mean, at the moment, life's good.
Yeah.
I've got choices in front of me. Of course, I could move to America and work on radio and telly over there and do all sorts of things and work on campaigns.
Yes.
I could do all of that. But I am ultimately British, English. It's the cricket season, for goodness. I can't go to America during the cricket season.
I mean, there are great things about America, but you will miss. There are things
there's
that
a
you
lot
would
of
miss.
things.
I mean, I lived there for 10 years, you know.
Yeah, and I've got first grandchild coming up in a few weeks' time. Things like that.
Yeah.
Things that are actually on a personal level very, very important indeed. But I will be going to America a fair bit for the last few months of this year. For some reason, don't ask me why, but for some reason, an awful lot of grassroots Americans with mildly conservative views like me.
Yes.
Know me and like me.
They do. Well, it's the Trump effect to some
Yeah,
extent.
and I was able, in 21, when I toured there for 6 weeks, I was actually able to go to events and to say to people, right, who's going to volunteer? Right. Who's going to volunteer to deliver leaflets, to knock on doors, to make phone calls? And people stood up and volunteered.
Yeah.
So if I can help with the campaign on the grassroots side of things, above all, that's what I'm going to do.
And can you remain as you are in the honorary position you are with Reform when you do that?
I don't see why not.
Right.
I don't see why not.
Well, they might object.
I mean, look, you know, I want to be clear about this because there's been some confusion. My number one priority is this country. However, the number one priority for the world is that Trump gets back. We've got big bully boy dictators threatening world peace in a way we've not seen for over 60 years. And bullies only respect strength. Trump radiates strength, Biden the opposite. And I believe the world was a safer place.
Well, it definitely was
in the White House.
There's no question about that. Whether it was a coincidence or not, nobody can say. But we've got to the end of the Donald Trump trial. We saw Robert De Niro pitching up yesterday.
We did.
Who seems to have lost the plot altogether. Completely bonkers mad. But I mean, presumably you speak to Donald Trump on a fairly regular basis. Is he worried about the fact that they might find him guilty? Because even if they do, I don't think it will stop him.
How on earth could a jury find him guilty? I mean, it was a very, very concocted charge with one so-called offence leading to another. That was why the law was breached. I can't believe they will.
There doesn't appear to be a crime.
No,
having
no,
been committed.
No, I don't think there's a crime of any kind at all.
Right.
And of course, if your star witness, is
Michael Cohen,
is the greatest liar of all time,
who admits on the stand that he stole money,
stolen money and lied. So, honestly, if that jury was to come up with a guilty verdict, I think he'd go 5 points higher in the polls. It's all looking good. And the most interesting thing, Mike, is the black vote.
Yeah.
You know, last time round, Trump got about 10% of the black vote. He's now polling at 20%, but rising.
Yes,
but
because
rising.
that's the other thing. I mean, even Biden is suffering at the hands of the immigration question and Gaza, because there are huge swathes of Michigan, I think it is, isn't it?
Michigan.
Where people are saying, well, if you're not going to get a peaceful solution for Gaza and Palestine, we're not going to vote for you.
Yeah, but I think the border issue is huge. I mean, when you think about it, it's
4 million, isn't it?
No, 7 million.
7 million.
7 million across that border.
That's amazing.
Just the numbers are, you know, we've got our problems, but goodness me, in America, it's even more serious. No, Trump's going to win. I'm very confident about that.
Yeah. Is there a job that he could give you over there in his administration that would keep you from coming back for the next cricket season?
I don't blooming know. How do you expect me to... I mean, this is where it all gets silly, isn't it? You know, what will you be doing in a year's... What are you having for lunch a year tomorrow?
I don't know.
I don't... Well, there you are. I don't know. I doubt it.
Right.
I doubt it. And I think, you know, whilst Trump likes foreign support, although I don't feel foreign when I'm there, I think to appoint foreigners to job, it's still quite difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And back here, just to go back to the moment when you decided that, you know, there's not enough time, I can't run.
I was gutted.
Was Richard Tice also gutted?
I think he was.
Did you fall out with him over it?
No.
I mean, I know Richard, so he won't make me ask you that question.
No, we haven't fallen out over it. I mean, I think we're both just very disappointed that we didn't have 6 months at this. I honestly think with 6 months at this, we could have done stunningly well. We're going to do well, and it's a building block, and our real target is 2029.
Yeah.
This is a 6-year plan, and Labour are going to be so bad in government.
They are going to be bad, but that's the other question I get from a lot of people is, are we sure that you can survive, can Britain survive 5 years of Labour? How will it be after the end of that?
Well, Starmer himself is not that different to the Conservatives, really. What's he going to do? Put taxes up a bit more? They put them up anyway.
Yeah.
The tax burden's the highest it's been since the late 1940s.
Yeah.
Immigration, he couldn't be worse, could he? Is it possible to be worse than the Conservatives?
I don't think
so. No, I don't think it is.
Right. But the NHS is worse in Wales than it is here.
That is certainly true, and many things in Wales are worse than they are here. Look, it's not going to be great, but the Tories... Let's just stick to this one big thing. The Tories have betrayed the electorate on what is the single biggest issue in terms of the impact on their daily lives. And I'm talking about their ability to get a GP appointment, the fact their kids can't get a house, can't get on a social housing ladder, can't afford to buy a house, all of those issues, infrastructure, traffic, you name it, the things that really affect our everyday life. The population explosion is the biggest
so
single
this is
factor
something I totally
affecting
agree with you. And
all
I said
of those things. And the Conservatives in 2010 promised tens of thousands a year net migration. Same again in 2015. Same again in 2017. And in 2019, with the Brexit vote, big reductions in immigration. We've gone up from an average from the late 1940s to the turn of the century of net 30,000 a year. It's now 750,000.
Yeah.
You thought Tony Blair was bad at this? They've been doubly bad. They have utterly betrayed the electorate, and that is why they have to lose this election. They don't deserve to lose this election. You cannot break trust with people on a vital issue to this degree, frankly, and be allowed to get away with it.
But Reform might be controversially able to make that happen in a way because of all the votes that you'll take away from the Tory party.
Done already. No.
If it's done already...
Done already. Those votes have gone already. And if you drill down into those people in the polls saying that they want to vote Reform, even if Reform withdrew all its candidates, very few of them are going back to the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Some will go to Labour, many will stay at home. So it's done. It's over. They've lost. Let's stop deluding ourselves that somehow there's going to be a turnaround in the Red Wall. There isn't. We're going to have a Labour government. The question is, what will the opposition be? And if it's this Conservative Party, unchallenged, they'll be in opposition, but not the opposition, because they're not capable of coming together on anything.
But if it becomes a Labour Party and a Labour government with Angela Rayner saying we're going to give a recognition to Palestine, we're going to make wokery even more of a thing, we're going to get diversity even further into British society as opposed to getting it on the way out, and we're going to bring in more stringent measures on free speech. We're going to make it more difficult. We're going to make Nigel Farage a hate figure, and every time he speaks, we're going to have him arrested. That could happen.
Well, it could happen. And if it does, great, because it'll mean a one-term Labour government, provided we have a proper party with sensible opinions in touch with Middle England.
And in 5 years, will you be taking them on as a Conservative at the height of some new, or at the head of some new organisation? Will you be in the Conservative Party?
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, Mike. Well, I think what I do know is this Conservative Party hasn't just betrayed us. It serves no purpose. It doesn't exist. It is a social democrat party. Yeah, sure, you can get your Ian Duncan Smiths into the studio and people like that. They are, in reality, a small minority within the Parliamentary Conservative Party. The Social Democrat One Nationers have got control of Conservative Central Office. They've got control of the party machine. Out there in the country, as I found out when I turned up at the Manchester conference last year, out there in the country, their members, their donors, their supporters, their activists are in a different place. So we have to find a way of bringing people together. And it ain't going to happen through the Conservative Party as it is. It will happen through a strong reform, and then we can see where we go. I agree with you. I think Labour will do some things that are pretty unpleasant.
Yeah.
Even if Starmer's instincts aren't to be like that, the party will drag him into those places. And so there's no need for it to be more than a one-term Labour government, but we have to have a united, common sense, brave, conservative, small c conservative party on the centre-right, and they'll win the 29 election.
Well, possibly so. You won't be seeing Diane Abbott again, apparently.
No.
She's been, I mean, they've been quite brutal to her, haven't they?
Such a shame, particularly with maths, A-level maths being on the agenda.
To be fair.
I mean, nothing memorable.
The thing about Starmer, and Julia said this, we've talked about it before, that, you immediately forget what he said. Literally, the following sentence, you've forgotten what he said.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, it's the most desperate start to a general election I've ever seen.
Yeah. Summer of 2019. The stalemate months, where we just went on
until the Brexit Party broke it.
Until the Brexit Party broke it again. Well, I was saying to you earlier, I mean, you've been part of every single major kind of sea change in politics without necessarily. I mean, people will say, "Oh, well, he never gets elected, Nigel," which is not true.
Doesn't matter.
But it doesn't seem to matter.
By the way, on that point, the journos, UKIP was a pressure group that stood for elections.
Yeah.
We weren't standing to win.
Right.
If we saved the deposit, it was an all-night party.
Right.
That was what we were doing. The first 20 years of UKIP, it wasn't a serious electoral threat, but it was there to promote the cause that we should be independent. I've only stood once seriously for Parliament, and the Conservatives won, but they cheated. And one of their agents got a 9-month prison sentence suspended for breaking electoral law. So I feel like setting the record straight on that is actually quite important.
Well, you also did get elected to the European Parliament. You were pretty substantial
hang on.
there.
Elected? I won two.
Yeah.
I led parties that won 2 national elections.
Right.
So I have, but the point is this. You can change things in this country without doing it the conventional way. You can change it, and now through media, social media, and all of these things, if you catch the mood, or if you inspire people to believe in something, you can cause change. And I promise you, I haven't finished yet.
No, I'm sure you haven't. Nigel, well, neither have I. I've got to stay until 10 o'clock. But thank you very much for coming in.
You.
We'll see you again.